Hi. So the topic today is for our discussion and dialogue, labor exploitation. And like the Minister Henriksson already kind of outlined in her speech, we have a long history of doing work in researching labor trafficking and exploitation. We actually started already in 2008. And I remember when we started that, the work, labor exploitation and human trafficking were not really connected together in people's minds. And we've had a tremendous long way that has been ongoing from that point onwards, and have had a lot of interesting court cases and examples, and the awareness of people in Finland in terms of labor trafficking has been increasing tremendously, and labor trafficking is the most commonly identified form of human trafficking in Finland. This summer we released a review where we looked back of 20 years of work against labor exploitation and trafficking in Finland, and that has been now translated into English, and we will publish it later this year or early next year. But when we looked at that, one of the aspects that we wanted to kind of highlight and thought that has been significant in looking at this is research, and then strong cooperation with motivated practitioners in the field. And that's why I'm very happy that I was able to invite here to discuss with me Katja-Pia Jenu, who works as a labor inspector and has been working over 15 years to tackle migrant labor exploitation in Finland. And I wanted to start the discussion with Katja-Pia on what is the biggest lesson you've learned from your 15 years of work as a labor inspector in tackling this phenomenon.
Hello, and thank you for the invitation. I'm always very happy to cooperate with HEUNI. Yes, it's been a long and sometimes a challenging road, but also a very interesting journey. I think something that I think more and more nowadays is the importance of multi-agency cooperation. And when I say multi-agency, I don't mean just government officials. Of course, the labor inspectorates, the police, the immigration officials, we are all important, but we also need NGOs who work with the victims, and for example, trade unions, that we all have to work together towards a common goal. And I think this is something that nowadays is working fairly well in Finland. But before you can start working with others, you have to have in your own administration the goal or the sense that labor exploitation is something that concerns also your administration. And I think this is something, when I started my work 17 years ago, there was a fairly strong discussion in at the labor inspectorates whether labor exploitation is something that concerns labor inspectorates. There were some fairly strong views that we should also only concentrate on occupational health and safety issues. Those were the real issues for labor inspectorates. But now, slowly over the years, things have changed, and I think now we have a fairly uniform view that labor inspectorates are a very important player in this field.
Thank you, Katja-Pia. Yes, great points about how awareness in the organization also leads the way in when it comes to then prioritizing the fight against labor exploitation and trafficking. Then Pekka, I hope you hear us. You're a bit newer to the labor exploitation scene, and you work in the National Investigation Lead on human trafficking in the Helsinki Police Department, in the special unit. How are you developing the work to tackle labor exploitation and trafficking?
Thank you, Anniina, and apologies to everyone for seeming a bit distant from you right now. This is quite the experience, as I'm seeing the both of you on two screens right now, and they are not in sync with the speech, so it's very multimedia right now. But as said, the police have only had this special unit for a bit over a year and a half now. And before that, we had a specialized team in Helsinki for labor trafficking from 2019 forwards. All of this doesn't mean that the police has not done anything about trafficking and labor trafficking before, but it's usually been due to the interest of a specific police officer, or then it's been like project-based investigations into seasonal workers or some other form of reaction to the issue. Now we are seeking to be more proactive with taking this work into the structures of the organization, having our teams. We now have 3 teams comprising the special unit for trafficking. We have a national team, an investigative team, and then a local team in Helsinki area. So we are very committed into tackling all trafficking, but especially labor trafficking, as that's such a huge issue in Finland right now, to be a consistent and ongoing part of our organization and to make it something that happens all the time, no matter if someone leaves or what the government's own interest might be. At least that's what we hope it would be. We are, as I said, we are developing our own team. We are constantly seeking to learn about how to encounter victims better, how to tackle different and changing forms of exploitation, like this somewhat new form of light entrepreneurship, of forcing workers to be have their own companies, so to say, to be enterprising under the guise of, or this being the guise that's used to mask the fact that they are workers being exploited. But we're also seeking to develop our national competence network for all police officers tackling trafficking issues all over Finland. And we've just seen magnificent results on what happens when people take the time and really look into the matter of trafficking and take the time to do a tour throughout and very efficient investigation into a labor exploitation case, such as the recent case that came out of from Tampere, from the Pirkanmaa District Court just a few days ago.
Yeah, thank you, Pekka. You highlighted the importance of taking the action to the structure. So instead of just having these motivated individuals who care about trafficking, it is very important to take the action in the structural level. And at the same time, in many of HEUNI's research projects that we've done, we've highlighted that labor trafficking and labor exploitation is indeed a structural issue. And it's a result of many different aspects of social, political, economical, and it's driven by inequality and global inequality, vulnerability, all these factors. So structural approach is indeed needed. We are also at HEUNI, we're developing a strategy proposal for the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment on how to counteract migrant labor exploitation. And this multi-agency cooperation that you both raised is indeed an important theme in that. And I just now wanted to ask, from the basis of your own work and expertise, what are your visions for improving multi-agency cooperation to strengthen identification of relevant cases and their investigation, and at the same time also, of course, to improve victims' access to justice? Katja-Pia, maybe you can start.
Thank you. I think, at least in my own opinion, I think the attitudes are, are okay in Finland. I haven't experienced something that I've heard from foreign colleagues, that officials are somehow jealous of their own field and don't want to share information between each other. I haven't experienced anything like that, but we do need more structural, maybe manuals or models for cooperating. I speak from the grassroots level, for example, joint inspections. We do have, last year there was a project by the Ministry of Interior, and they developed some sort of guidelines for multi-agency cooperation. And that was a good start, but it was like a high level, well, not high level, but it was more like an overall view of how to work together or how to plan joint inspections. But I think now we need the second step to actually go through what to do during the joint inspection, that we safeguard the victims and we can collect all the necessary information. For example, what was covered in the previous presentation, how to talk to the victims, and also we have to respect the rights of the possible suspect as well. So a lot of things to consider, and I think that's something that I would like to see in the future.
Thank you, Katja-Pia. What about Pekka? What's your vision?
I think Katja-Pia said a lot about it already, and it's not just your opinion, Katja-Pia, it's a shared opinion between the authorities that we are very happy to share the work. And I don't mean to have someone else do our work, but to work together to tackle the issue. The Police University College program Katja-Pia mentioned about the multi-agency cooperation, that's an excellent start, and now we just have to see it carried through to be made into something daily in our operations, and have it function in our daily work and in tackling all these issues. We have the attitudes right now, everything, we have the resources even. It's not even a matter of saying that we don't have enough resources to do this work, as we've demonstrated that we do when we set ourselves into it and we work together. But we just have to have the routines about it, and we have to break away from just leaning into the familiar people we know and leaning into the familiar organizations we know. So it's not a matter of calling Katja-Pia from the labor inspectorate or calling Pekka from the police. It's about the police calling the labor inspectorate and the labor inspectorate calling the tax officials and so forth. There are still issues to be tackled. Sharing of information has proved slightly tricky. We as authorities have such different legislations on who can share what. The police have altogether different laws compared to the tax officials or the labor inspectorate or the foreign safety authorities. But these are just pieces of the puzzle to be fitted together, and the work is going on as we speak. We've had research into the matter, and we are in discussion on how to develop a joint information system that can ease up on this. But having said all these things about moving from knowing people and having the motivated people, we still need the motivated people. We need to give feedback. We need to have the people who are actually doing this feel like they can accomplish great things with the job they do. And we need to constantly bring them together, not just in one area, but all over Finland in a way that suits the environment they are in. So I would like to see this as some sort of a hybrid model when it comes to those areas of Finland where authorities are more scattered. And then in, for example, southern Finland, where we have a lot of the key players sitting quite close to each other and having these big offices, I'm sure we could fit each other to sit in the same offices, maybe not daily, but at least weekly, to discuss the issues, to plan out the new inspections and to share the information.
Great, thank you, Pekka. That sounds very good to me. That if people really do share same office at some point of the week, the information flow is more smooth in that way. Now, this year in Finland, we've had actually quite a lot of discussion about recruitment of migrant workers and the fact that many migrant workers pay for their job, and this is illegal according to the Finnish law, and many people pay even very extortionate amounts of money for the job opportunity in different sectors. So I wanted to raise this question that in the coming years, there's a lot of discussion about this in the media. We will need more migrant workers in different sectors in Finland, as do many other European countries. So how do we make sure that these newly recruited migrant workers are not forced to pay illegal and extortionate recruitment fees, which of course increase their vulnerability to exploitation, so that these people do not end up in situations of exploitation? What do you think, Katja-Pia?
Well, I think it's not just the recruitment phase. There are lots of other issues as well, and I think we need to tackle it with in two ways. I think first is to ensure that all the migrant workers, even before they come to Finland, but also while they are in Finland, they receive information in their own language. What are the Finnish rules in working lives? What are in the Finnish working life? What are the rights and obligations in Finland? And we also need to, the government officials need to provide service in maybe in more languages than Finnish and Swedish. Swedish we have, because Swedish is in Finland our second official language, and English is provided in limited, or English service is limited. So I think in the future we have to have more language options. I think that's is going to be a big challenge for the government officials in the future. So giving out information is one side, and then the second side is effective monitoring and consequences for the employers who exploit their workers. So we have to make sure that the employers realize that it's not profitable to exploit workers, and there will be consequences if they do so.
Thank you. What about Pekka? Of course, investigating recruitment that has taken place in some other country than Finland is especially difficult, but what can be done?
The first step that we are seeking to take is to raise awareness of this issue. From the police point of view right now, in all the cases we're investigating about labor trafficking and a lot of sexual exploitation cases as well, there is always an extortionate fee to come to Finland. It's the way the world works right now. When you're coming from an underdeveloped country to developed countries, you will have to pay. It's just a universal truth right now. So we all have to be aware of the fact that everyone who comes to Finland pays in one way or another. That's a good starting point on seeing the scale of this issue. Then we need to tackle the issue. We need to have jurisprudence about it. We need to be public about the fact that this has to be stopped, and the people who are being extortionate, who are extorting money from people coming after a better life to seek work, they need to pay themselves, and the money has to be returned to the victims, preferably the victims and not the government. Katja-Pia raised a lot of good points again, as she usually does, about making sure that the employers, companies, they cannot make a profit out of this. Another side of the issue is the fact that it's not always the companies themselves that are exploiting the workers, that are using extortionate means. It can be even quite big Finnish companies who are employing people who have paid a lot of money to come to Finland. And it's not the companies themselves who are taking the money. It's the people who are recruiting them and sometimes work in middle management or as team leaders in the company and are referring the people to this Finnish company. So all Finnish companies who employ a lot of foreign work, who employ a lot of people coming from underdeveloped countries, need to be aware of the fact that their employees could be exploited in this manner, and they should be really open about the terms and the conditions under which they are employing these people, that there is no one there they need to pay for in money to get a job in Finland. Having said that, these are only some of the steps, because we know for a fact that you cannot change the world just by saying that wrong things are wrong. If it would be that easy, then we would have done it already, of course. So it needs to be a multi-front effort, combining having the information in their own languages, having the companies be aware of the fact that, well, both the facts that their employees might be exploited, as well as the fact that they cannot themselves exploit people without paying the consequences. And we have to reach out to foreign countries as well to develop ways of ensuring that people take seriously and place trust in the official channels of coming to Finland for work. We could reach out to countries that send a lot of seasonal workers, like Thailand, for example, and work with them to try and ensure that people do trust the official ways. We've had reports coming in that if we set up an initiative to recruit people from an underdeveloped country, no one will take it because they don't trust a free system. They trust a system where they have to pay an arm and a leg to get a job. Then they know that they're getting something of value. But if it's free, they see easily that it's not of value. So we need to really work about it, and we need to reach to other countries as well.
Thank you, Pekka. Great points. Because, of course, ultimately why we do this is to help the victims, improve the victims' access to justice. And when we give people information about their rights and empower them to seek assistance and seek justice, that allows us to strengthen identification of cases. But at the same time, of course, it's extremely important that these cases then proceed in the criminal justice system, and that people have ways in which to access justice. And also what we've been thinking in our work in doing research and policy development on this topic is how to get people access to remedy, especially access to unpaid wages that are major issue for many migrant workers. Their biggest priority, how to find ways in which they could have better access to this when they are not perhaps members of trade unions, and our system is classically goes through that way to get unpaid wages, and then we have these people who don't understand the language, don't have the awareness on how to do this, and at HEUNI we've suggested some options on this, and I really hope that in the future we do have more possibilities in getting people also this aspect, not just justice but remedy. I think we are now running out of time, so I thank you very much for joining me in the panel, and it is always very good to work together with you, so we will continue cooperating on these topics in the future. Thank you very much.